Hi, this is Sunil Bhartia and welcome to another episode of TFR Insights. And today we have with us Mike Anderson, VP of Marketing at Stateless. Mike, first of all, thanks for taking your time out and talking to me today. This is the first time we are talking, so I would really like to know a bit about the company itself. Name is all, awesome there if you look at the modern architecture. So tell us a bit about the company itself.
Stateless as a company was founded in 2016 by Murad Kablan and Eric Keller. They were two PhD members of the program, PhD program members at Colorado University. Both of them had been in the industry prior to joining that PhD program at CU, working in technologies such as SDN and NFV. And both of them kind of struggled a little bit. They realized that there were some challenges in how we build networks. And as part of their PhD program, one of the things they got involved with is just how could we make building networks easier? And that's what gave them basically the impetus to get together and start Stateless.
At that point, when they were thinking about building this company, we do know where the market was, where the industry was, containers and architecture. But what was the pressing problem or need that they see in this space that they realized that, hey, we need to solve this problem and start this company?
Yeah. Well, that's great. What was really excellent is because they both had prior industry experience. One of the things that they both came back with, particularly Murad, he was like, it's too difficult for companies to set up interconnections, to create networks. It takes too much time. A good example of that is when we started trying to figure out how do we build this product and how do we design it, we did a lot of interviews with people from the industry. And one story in particular really illustrates why this challenge needed to be solved. We talked with a network engineer who was working at a healthcare company, and the company recently got hacked, and they had a bunch of emails stolen, and they said, "Look, we need to fix this." And so the guy's name is Ben, and Ben said, "Hey, no problem." They said, "Ben, we want you to fix this tomorrow. Get this done. We cannot have this type of security risk," right? And so Ben found a solution in a cloud application that they wanted to deploy. And of course, you read all the marketing and it says, yeah, you can deploy a cloud program in days, right? Well, what they thought was going to take days took 6 months. And not only did it take 6 months, it also took an additional $50,000 in cost because he had to go out and buy a bunch of new equipment. He had to get it to work with their existing network, get it to work with the cloud service provider. It was just a very, very bad situation. So the net of it was, okay, this is not how it can work, right? We need the whole promise of the cloud, the promise of all this new technology is if I need something, I can get it tomorrow. And so that's really what gave us the impetus to say, okay, we can fix that. Let's make getting connected easier.
So let's talk a bit about, what kind of, first of all, is it Stateless a SaaS, software as a service company? Do you offer services or do you also offer, products that people can install in their on-prem? Talk about your product and what are the platforms that you support?
So our product is software. We're not a service provider. We actually build and develop software, a software ecosystem that allows people to build interconnections, basically be able to put things together with routing types of functions, security functions, etc. One of the things we like to say when you talk about, as I was explaining with interconnects, one of the difference between just a regular connection and an interconnect is it needs routing. But just because you need routing doesn't mean you need a router. You just need something that will perform a routing function. People have tried to build software routers in the past, but the problem has been that when they've approached it as let's emulate the hardware rather than approaching it from a standpoint of what does the user really need. Everybody says, well, the user needs a router. Well, actually, the user doesn't need a router. They need BGP. And so we built a software platform that essentially creates network function microservices, is what we call it. It's basically taking cloud native software development techniques and applying it to the world of networking. You think about everything, the advances we've seen in cloud and in compute and in storage. They've been incredible in the last decade, but the network itself has somewhat lagged behind. So the founders at Stateless said, hey, here's an opportunity. Let's take these latest and greatest software development techniques and apply them to the world of networking. So we sell so it's a software product. Primarily, we sell this product to service providers, people like co-location operators, network service providers who need to provide those higher level functions to build interconnections.
Which also means that partnerships are critical to the company.
Yeah. So one of the things that you may have heard about is our recent announcement with Barefoot Intel. And it's actually kind of I think a great example of the types of things, how things are changing. So Barefoot was an independent company when we first started working with them. They've developed a programmable network ASIC that is programmed using a language called P4. The great thing about what Barefoot did is, in the world of hardware, networking hardware, a lot of what the hardware can do is defined by a fixed programmed ASIC. That means if you want it to do something different, you have to wait for the hardware vendor to come out with a new release. And usually those release cycles are 18 months to 24 months in time, right? Well, the world moves a lot faster than that now. So as we were developing our platform, as I kind of mentioned before, one of the things we did when we started with it thinking, what does the user need to do? Not what does the protocol need to do, or what can the hardware do? What does the user need to do? So the user needs to be able to connect to cloud resources very, very quickly. They need to accommodate new protocols or new different types of interconnection techniques. And sometimes that means they need different hardware to do that. When we first started developing our product, that didn't exist. This technology, this P4 programmable ASIC didn't exist. And we ran into problems pretty quickly trying to work around that. Well, along comes Barefoot. We started working with them. We were one of the early adopters of their technology. And we did something with it, again, different than what everybody else was doing. Most people took this programmable ASIC and said, hey, we can do hardware offload. We can take a process that we normally would run in software, but we're not going to run it in software. We're going to run it in hardware because now we can program the hardware. But it's kind of actually the exact opposite of what you want to do, because the whole idea here is to put more programmability into the network, not less. So we said, oh, wait a minute. Actually, we're going to leverage this as a programmable piece of hardware, and we're going to program it. And that is one of the key elements of helping us basically create this really, really flexible platform. One of the things I like to explain to people is with what we've got with this stateless Luxon platform that we've built, we can program everything except for what makes a 1 and a 0, right? We can't decide how many photons makes a 1 and how many photons makes a 0. That's still pretty much defined by hardware. But everything else from that, how we frame those 1s and 0s into packets, how we interpret those packets. And one of the things that's really, really critical is we can understand as soon as a packet comes into our platform, who it belongs to. So per tenant or per user, which is an incredible capability when you start thinking about deploying something like this and wanting to be able to serve lots of users.
First of all, what I want to understand is that what kind of unique challenges this crisis has created, especially for the networking space. Number two, once this is over, though it will take time, out of this kind of unfortunate situation, there will be something fortunate, which is that the companies have already started to look at their infrastructure from a different point of view. So there will be a lot of lessons that we have learned that we'll take forward, which will help in building the infrastructure from a different perspective.
Let's talk about this and tear it apart in a couple of different ways. One of the things that businesses and organizations have been doing is moving a lot more of their operations and their IT infrastructures outside the organization. They've been outsourcing. And this is evidenced in a couple of different ways. One of the most prevalent ways that we see it is obviously the rapid consumption, almost 100% adoption of cloud at this point. The percentage for cloud adoption right now of companies using at least one cloud provider is well above 90%. Companies that are using multiple cloud providers is well over 60%, and it's continuing to increase. So that's the first thing that's happening. But another thing that's really happening that some people are aware of is that a lot of these organizations have been also moving their workloads into co-location provider space outside of the organization. And for those companies that have started to do that when COVID-19 hit and things got locked down and people said, hey, you can't come to the office anymore, they were in a much better position because those co-location operators were still taking care of the data centers. The ones that had data centers inside their organizations, like you were mentioning, some people weren't prepared. They didn't have laptops. They didn't have all these things. They were in a little bit tougher spot right now because they can't get people into their building, right? They're not allowed to have workers on site to take care of workloads, and they're in a little bit more difficult spot. So one of the things that we have, just by the nature of what we do, we have a lot of relationships with co-location providers. And, talking with them, one of the things that I've learned is that they've seen an incredible increase in demand from both their existing tenants and people that want to get into the co-location space now, because they realize, hey, if I can do that, I would be in a much better position, not only for what's going on now, but maybe future things that might happen, right? Future disasters. So good and bad. The bad part is if you're not already in the co-location space, you're not going to get into a co-location space right now, because even the co-location providers are dealing with challenges. Mostly what they've been able to do is to provide additional capacity to people that are already there. And they've been focusing primarily on critical services like healthcare providers, first responders, et cetera. And in fact, and that's one of those things that I think is, we hear so many stories of people going out and doing the extra thing to help us all get through this. One of the things many of the co-location providers have been doing is providing a lot of those services free of charge or greatly discounted to those, services that we all need, which has been fantastic. So one of the things I think we're going to see, we're talking about, how this long-term will impact us, is it's going to drive and accelerate that movement to outsource more of these, what I call non-differentiating types of services, to get them outsourced, to get them into co-location spaces, to get them out of my building so that I don't have to take care of them. I've got the resources of a bunch of people to help me. Bringing it back to kind of what I was talking about what stateless does. One of the things that when we think about connecting to clouds, it's a completely different type of connection than what organizations have been doing in the past. So we think about building networks and working with network service providers, your legacy providers like Verizon, AT&T, CenturyLink, et cetera. They're very, very good at providing fast, high-performing, connectivity at scale, right? But that connectivity is transparent, for maybe the best word to use it. They build it as basically as pseudo wires. They want it to look just like a wire between one point to the other point. And for many, many, many years, that's exactly what we've needed. But something's happened now with this introduction of cloud is businesses are not just connecting to another location of their business, they're actually connecting into a different network. And that is a game changer because when I'm not just extending my network, when I'm connecting to your network, you have your own address space. You have your own rules. You have your own security policies, which I have to comply with if I want to connect to you. In order to do that, I need a bunch more equipment. I don't need a pseudo wire. I need something that has routing. It may need address translation. It may need these other features, which the traditional network service provider isn't really equipped to provide. And not only that, the equipment itself that does these kinds of things, your traditional routers and firewalls and load balancers, et cetera, aren't designed to do that, provide service that way. And so that's going back to what Stateless is doing is that's kind of the problem we saw and that problem that we're attacking. So it's good, like we said, it's kind of a bittersweet scenario here.
Mike, yes, you're absolutely right. The way things are moving, we are going to kind of look at a totally different industry from now that we are looking at. All these events are canceled, so we cannot even go and do those hallway track where we'll hang out with people and talk about that. We also don't know what the events will look like in future, but the good thing is that especially you guys are there who are actually helping these companies with the business continuity. Even if the whole world is at a standstill, a lot of bang-on technologies that are being powered by companies like Stateless. And I really appreciate the time that you took today to talk to me, and I look forward to talking to you again at some point in future. Thank you.
Oh no, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation.